Hey, it's Frank King, and the proposed topic of my TED Talk is Start That Conversation. Every year in the United States, 8 million people contemplate suicide. 1 million people attempt it, 44,000 in their lives. 44,000, that's twice the rate of homicide. As a matter of fact, more people die in the United States from self-harm every year than homicide, wars, natural disasters combined. And hardly anybody's talking about it. I mean, think about this. On 9/11, on that awful morning, 3,987 people died in those terrorist attacks. Every year in the United States, 11 times that many die from suicide. And again, hardly anybody's talking about it, which I find fascinating and sad because I've discovered in my research for this talk that the mere mention of the words depression and suicide out loud elicit the most amazing responses from people, some of whom I have just met. I'm working a cruise ship. I'm a comedian. I do 12 weeks on the boats every year. It's breakfast, it's Toledo, it's jammed, can't find a seat. Look, there's a woman at a table for two. There's an empty seat. I point, she nods, I sit. She looks up, she goes, "Hey, are you the comedian?" I said, "Hey, did you enjoy the comedy show?" She goes, "I love the comedy show." I said, "Then I'm the comedian." She goes, what would you have said if I told you I hated the comedy show?" "I'm a plumber from Des Moines." She goes, "Is cruise comedy all you do?" I said, "No, I'm a public speaker." She goes, "What topic?" Now, I have had this conversation many times in the past. Know what's coming, so I said depression and suicide. Started a countdown in my head. 3, 2, 1. She goes, "I tried to kill myself twice." We have literally just met. She goes, "First time in college, kind of half-hearted, not particularly serious. Second time, far more serious. I graduated college, graduated medical school, had the knowledge, had the equipment, had the IV started in my ankle. Suicide cocktail one hand, syringe in the other, getting ready to load it up. Phone rings. She says, "Do I answer it?" "Well, I better, because it might be somebody who'd worry, come over and interrupt." She picks up the phone. It's her 13-year-old son. She goes, "I don't know if you heard something in my voice or had a premonition, but he said, 'Mom, don't do anything.'" So I didn't. I did not give up on the idea of suicide. However, I did not want to do it that day because I knew that he would always know. He spoke to me right before I did it and would wonder if there wasn't something he could say or do to keep me from dying by suicide. The good news is, there are things you can say, there are things you can do, because 8 out of 10 people who die by suicide, 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent. I said, "How old is he now?" She goes, "He's 21. I said, "Does he know his phone call saved your life?" She goes, "No." How do I start that conversation? And that became the working title of this TED Talk, Start That Conversation. Of course, the question then comes up, comedian, talking about depression and suicide, what exactly? How does that... Couple things. One, comedian, good choice, I believe, because our job since the time of the court jester is to speak truth to power on behalf of the powerless. I believe I speak truth to the power of mental illness on behalf of those often powerless in its grip. Number 2, I believe where there's humor, there's hope, where there's laughter, there's life, that nobody dies laughing. And number 3, depression and suicide run in my family. It's called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide, and my mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I, at the ripe old age of 4, found her. I'll spare you the details. And I myself, during the recession in April 2010, came close enough to dying by suicide that I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. So I do believe that qualifies me. Now, the question often arises, how do you start that conversation? If you suspect somebody is depressed or they are brave enough to tell you they're depressed, here's how you start that conversation. Here's what you don't say. "Oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Turn that frown upside down. Quit whining." Here's what you do say if somebody is brave enough to let you know they have depression. "I'm here for you and mean it. I know you're not crazy, lazy, or self-absorbed. I know that depression is a mental illness. The good news is, with time and treatment, things will get better. I will take the time and mean it, and help you get the treatment and mean it." And here's the biggie. You need to ask them, are they having thoughts of suicide? There is a school of thought. You should never mention the S word in front of someone who's depressed because it will give them the idea of suicide, as if it never crossed their mind. Suicide? What a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? If they are having thoughts of suicide, here's what you do not say. You're just looking for attention. You're being melodramatic. Nobody who talks about suicide ever does it. Here's what you do say. Don't do it. Followed by, do you have a plan? If they have a plan, what is your plan? If they're depressed and having thoughts of suicide, have a plan, and it's detailed. Do not leave them alone if you can possibly help it. Your job at that point as a mental health first responder is to get them on the phone with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline and, you guessed it, start that conversation.